Greetings, everyone. This is Jeff Wilkerson, professor of physics at Luther College, bringing you our weekly series on what to look for in the night sky. This time we're looking at the week of November 1st, 2021. So the first week of November in 2021, and we're going to turn our attention back to Jupiter and Saturn. I've been watching Jupiter and Saturn. We go out for walks in the evening. These are really prominent bright objects in the southern sky in the evening. So you go out, you look to the south just a little bit after dark, and as long as you're in the northern hemisphere here, and when you look to the south just a little bit after dark, the two brightest objects out there will be Jupiter and Saturn. Well, for sure Jupiter is very bright. So you see Jupiter shining maybe if you're out just after dark, maybe still a little bit east of south. A little bit later at night, and it will have crossed the meridian and will be west of south. But you want to look more or less south right now, and you'll see Jupiter. And just off to the right of Jupiter is bright Saturn. So you'll see those two objects glowing in the southern sky. We've seen them. We've talked about them before. They've been prominent in our sky for a while. So that's what we're looking at right now. Now, they're in the constellation Capricorn, and Jupiter is very close to this star Delta Capricorni. Delta Capricorn right here. Gamma is this star over here. So Jupiter makes a little triangle with these two stars like that. Many nights, unless it's good and dark, you may have a hard time seeing Gamma, but Delta is pretty prominent. And once before, I think we did a video here. We did a little film where we talked about looking at Jupiter relative to Delta Capricorni there. And so when you look at Delta here, you want to kind of note where Jupiter is relative to that this week, and see Saturn off this direction, and above Saturn there's a couple of stars up this direction that pop out pretty well. We've had really clear transparent skies lately, so I've been seeing a lot of stars, so the stars have been really good for us here lately. But we see this triangle down this direction for Jupiter, particularly Jupiter relative to Delta, and then Saturn, we see the Alpha and Beta stars of Capricorn up above Saturn up this direction. So we see those two stars popping out up here, and these. So we kind of see where these things are, where Jupiter and Saturn are relative to these stars. A couple other things that we'll note. You got a small telescope. Beta is a very easy double star to pull out. So there are two widely separated stars. One of the components is actually a double star in and of itself, and you can pop that apart. It's not all that hard. I think it was 6 arc seconds is the closer component right there. And so you can actually see two stars fairly easily in Beta right here, and then can separate one of those stars into two stars itself. So you can see sort of 3 stars maybe in that system when you look at that with a small telescope. And also right now, if you draw a line, Jupiter's about halfway between globular star clusters M30 and M2. And so that's something for you to look at for sure in a small telescope. You can probably pull those out in some binoculars that you have. So if you slide down this direction and up this direction, kind of scan, you might see fuzzy patches, M30 and M2 globular star clusters. So that's just, our focus here today is on Jupiter and Saturn, because Jupiter and Saturn are the stars of the evening sky right now, even though they're not stars. There you go. Deal with that. So they're the objects that we're really paying attention to. But there's a couple other things for you to go out there and kind of look at. Now, Jupiter and Saturn. What we want to do. We've done this before. Offered up some longer term, midterm, and longer term observing projects. Things for you to work on. And here's something for you to be watching over the coming weeks. Jupiter and Saturn are both undergoing what we call prograde motion right now. Forward motion, prograde. Retrograde would be backward motion. Prograde is forward motion. So they're undergoing forward motion, and for the planets, that means tracking west to east, this direction, through the stars, against the background stars. And I think over the month of November, you can have a great opportunity to watch this happen with Saturn and Jupiter, particularly Jupiter. Okay, both of them are moving this way. Now, when we catch up and pass them, if the planets are all moving this direction, if we catch up and pass them, they're going to momentarily look like they're going in the other direction. Just like when you're passing a car, it looks like that car is going backward against the distant hills. And we would say they undergo retrograde motion, westward motion against the background stars. But right now, both Jupiter and Saturn are undergoing prograde motion. They're moving this direction. And with Jupiter so close to Delta Capricorni right there, it would be great to track its motion here over the next few weeks. You just need a few weeks to do this. If you keep going through December, you're really going to see Jupiter end up way out here. So by the time we get in deep into December, Jupiter is way out over here, and you can see that motion. There should be no doubt about it. So I recommend going out and looking at it for sure, and remembering what that pattern looks like. But if you've got a little sketch pad and you want to draw yourself a little sketch each night of what this group of stars, what this pattern looks like right here, just Delta and Jupiter. You don't actually need Gamma in there. Just these two objects. Go ahead and sketch it. I think your cell phone might actually be able to take a picture that captures Jupiter and Saturn here too, so you might be able to photograph the situation that we have right here. But by the time we get 3 weeks later, so this is what this is going to look like middle of the first week in November, November 3rd, let's say, I don't know. This is the pattern. They're not moving very quickly, so all the week is going to look more or less like this. But by the time you get to the end of November, November 20 something, Jupiter will have passed Delta and will be lying east of the Delta star over here. So in the month of November, you're going to watch Jupiter go from there to there. And because of that, its relationship relative to Delta Capricorni, it's relatively easy motion to see. To watch Jupiter move from here to here. And again, by the time we get out into December, it will have moved on over this direction. So watch this over the course of 2 or 3 weeks. Just a couple of weeks later, Jupiter will have its closest approach to Delta Capricorni there, be in conjunction with it, and we'll see this separation be pretty small. So right now, that's what you're doing this week. Watch that separation and see if you can see that separation between Delta Capricorni and Jupiter getting smaller and smaller and smaller, and then start to grow as the month progresses. As we get into next week and the week after that, we'll see it shrink to its minimum and then start to grow back out. So this is great. We want to focus on this region of the sky, but note that Saturn is doing the same thing. Saturn's a little further away from us, so its motion is a little bit less apparent. And so Saturn is drifting this direction as well against the background stars. So it's worth paying attention to these stars, Alpha and Beta, above Saturn and the pattern that makes right now, and watch how Saturn's getting further away from that pairing of stars over this direction. So this is for this week. We want to go outside. We want to appreciate Jupiter and Saturn as the objects that really light up the night sky this week. If we want to, we can look at the double stars that make up Beta Capricorni, and we can think about trying to find globular star clusters M2 and M30 out here. But then what we want to do as we appreciate the show that is Jupiter and Saturn, we want to note where Jupiter is relative to Delta and where Saturn is relative to Alpha and Beta, and keep an eye on that in the coming weeks. Let's just watch this progress. Watch these things move across this direction, and I think this motion should become pretty apparent to you. Good luck with that, and enjoy that, everybody. I'm looking forward to the month of November and observing Jupiter and Saturn as they move against the background stars. I hope you are too. We'll have something new and interesting for you next week. Have a great week, everybody.